Yeah, we're on to review the right half of the bracket for BattleBots World Championship VII. I know that I'm a tad late on finishing this series, but hey, I hate animating, I hate it, gosh! Or at least how long it takes. But yeah, last video covered the first half of the bracket. Some big names like Tantrum, Scorpios, and Bloodsport were eliminated in the first round, but no huge upsets. This side of the round of 32 though, looks much crazier. British robots being pitted against each other, the number 1 seed Minotaur against 32 seed Fusion, and the only crusher is here. The only rookie to make the bracket this season is RIPperoni. It's beaten some of the best bots already. Endgame, Copperhead, and Hijinks. It lost its first fight against Scruff of all bots, but finished with a qualifier record of 3-1. Quite the resume, KOing a 2-time champion and a consistent top 10 seed. Their opponent is Black Dragon. They're most notable for having never been KO'd. Until Riptide, but still, they're very durable, and win a modest 2-2 with a good schedule and pedigree. But comparing these two records, who would have thought a pizza would have a more intimidating presence than a dragon? RIPperoni's massive disc and I guess their single wedgelet proved to get the better of Black Dragon, and they sent them flying through the air. Even inverted, Black Dragon went straight at RIPperoni, taking a shot directly to their top, disabling their egg beater. Soon after, they caught fire. Of course, this isn't really a problem for Black Dragon like it is for, you know. Black Dragon continued ramming RIPperoni, and their durability was showing as the drive was still running while on fire and taking giant hits from the pizza disc. Sometimes Black Dragon would be sent flying, but also it would occasionally deflect RIPperoni's hits with its wedge. As the match went on, you could see RIPperoni lose power to its stabilizing flywheel, and gradually, its drive slowed down. By the last minute, RIPperoni was sluggishly crab walking. Black Dragon took the opportunity to knock RIPperoni onto the upper deck, with 30 seconds remaining. RIPperoni would have gotten counted out if they were on the upper deck for too long, but by this point, they weren't moving. With just 3 seconds left, RIPperoni was declared knocked out. What a clutch by Black Dragon. An impressive showing for both, but it was the end of RIPperoni's run. They'll still definitely win Rookie of the Year, if it still existed. Right, mates? So we have 2 British vertical spinners, and I have to say, I was kind of disappointed they pitted the 2 British verts against each other. Given Cobalt's reputation for, many expected Monsoon to meet the same fate, due to Cobalt's more meta design and legendary British driver, Dave Moulds. Interestingly though, I'm pretty sure Monsoon technically has the stronger weapon, given its size and tip speed. But I mean that didn't stop Bite Force, but you know, it's Bite Force.
Let the bot battle begin!
As expected, it was Cobalt who won the first exchange, tipping Monsoon on its back. It looked like Cobalt's forks were indeed winning the low ground against Monsoon's, but they weren't able to scoop up Monsoon for, you know, a Cobalt shot. Turns out it was Monsoon who would do that, because as Cobalt slammed them into the screws, they oversteered and left themselves open for a split second, allowing Monsoon to send them flying with a shot to their corner. Cobalt uses its disc to self-right, but it was struggling to land back on its wheels. When they did, Cobalt had lost 2 of its piano keys, but they still had its long forks left. Monsoon started winning the exchanges more, sending Cobalt flying. While they did try to fight back, Cobalt, for the first time that I've seen, started going on the defensive and ran away. Monsoon eventually ripped off the second to last fork, before sending Cobalt flying in probably their biggest hit in their career. Cobalt's disc wasn't spinning after the impact, so they were stuck inverted. Yeah, barely anybody expected Monsoon to win. Not because they're bad, Monsoon is considered one of the high tiers. It's just Cobalt has proven to be a meta top tier one-shot machine. But Monsoon did win, in brutal fashion. Next is the dreaded 1v32 matchup. Because of its nature, it's either a brutal slaughter or one of the biggest upsets. This time, it's the so far undefeated Brazilian drum spinner Minotaur against Team Wayachi's dual spinner, Fusion. Fusion, despite going 1-3, made it in because of having really good showings despite their losses. For the first 2 matches at least. They almost beat Witch Doctor and would have had the match ended 30 seconds earlier. Their Huge and Rotator matches were kind of embarrassing. But the bot has shown it can deal tons of damage with either its vertical or horizontal. But Minotaur is a solid chunk of aluminum with a dangerous weapon. It can handle verts and horizontals, so a violent fight is expected.
Let the bot battle begin!
Fusion decided to lead with its vertical spinner first, and shockingly actually won the first exchange, hitting the sides of Minotaur's drum and flipping them over. Minotaur resorted to ramming Fusion to self-right. Yeah, Fusion did its thing and caught fire, then died. Seriously, at the worst possible time. I don't doubt Minotaur would have still won, especially since Fusion lost the belt, but still, it sucks that Fusion died the quickest it ever did in its most important match. Meanwhile, Minotaur advances to face either Malice or Switchback, which is probably the least talked about fight in this quadrant. There isn't a top tier or fan favorite in this matchup, but rather two under the radar bots who have been doing well. Well, Malice did have a pretty weird fight night season. Both robots are 3-1, a much better performance than last season. Switchback is a vertical egg beater on an arm, similar to Whiplash. Malice is a horizontal disc or a bar spinner. Interestingly, it's a horizontal that uses feeder forks. I don't get why people don't use the sideways feeder wedge for horizontal since it's just a sideways vert. Both robots broke off an opponent's weapon this year, so they are capable of doing a lot of damage. Switchback came in with a plow setup, but honestly Malice's forks would probably just get under them. Switchback crossed the arena quick, but Malice turned, got under them, and grinded their side while pushing them against the screws. In response, Switchback swung its arm around and shed some sparks off of Malice. I have to mention this, but the death hum though. This bot really had a glow up. Now, it's not a Riptide level hum though, and it didn't last long, because Switchback's drum died, allowing Malice to land small shots without any worry. Some of the impacts dislodged both of Switchback's arm chains, and they really had no response to Malice's attacks. Switchback started to slow down, but continued fighting, pushing Malice into the rails. Time ended, and with Malice on the constant attack and actually dealing damage, it won pretty easily. At the start of the season, Malice looked like it was going to have another bad year, but they turned it around. 3-1, and going to the round of 16, yeah, that's pretty good. Now in the next round, they're going to be facing Minotaur, which is probably going to be the hardest fight in their entire career. Hydra vs Death Roll. One is a sea monster flipper with an insane ground game, and the other is an Australian crocodile with a giant vertical disc that has no ground game at all. Death Roll is one of the few reach verts, as in it has a spinner that is designed to protrude far out so it can be the first point of contact. It did have small forks in its first fight in Season 4, but ditched them since. Now, without a way to get under Hydra, it would need to hit anywhere but the front, unless they want to hit the ceiling. Getting to the sides is not an easy task to do against Hydra, or will anybody with any amount of dexterity, because all it takes is this. It took 2 seconds for Hydra to move towards Death Roll and land the first flip, nearly sending Death Roll into the lights. Death Roll is a pretty reliable robot, so it can take a couple hits, and it resumed circling around Hydra to hit the flanks. Hydra did a good job of tracking Death Roll, and the cycle of Death Roll circling, getting caught then flipped, and self-running with the disc played out for a good while. Hydra seemed to be using more flipper power than usual, since Death Roll was getting sent up very high. Halfway through the match, Death Roll finally found an angle and took a huge bite out of Hydra's corner. Hydra is made out of thin titanium, so Death Roll's blade got gouged into Hydra. Both robots tried to unstick themselves, but neither one seemed to budge, so the referees stopped the match to allow for an unstick. The safety crew was able to split them apart, so the match continued.
Let the bot battle restart!
Death Roll tried to fire up its weapon, but it clearly was damaged. From the looks of it, they were trying to wiggle their weapon to free themselves from Hydra, but I guess that broke their blade. Hydra's drive was damaged, and it could only pivot in place. Still, J-Keyword was able to keep Hydra's flipper pointed and flip Death Roll whenever they got close. Death Roll half-jokingly tried to stab Hydra with its knife, but got flipped, and they couldn't really do anything before the match ended. While Death Roll did cripple Hydra, Hydra still dominated the match even while limping, so they won unanimously. Definitely a drop in performance from Season 4 from Death Roll, but there isn't much they can do against a flipper without a ground game. Good on Hydra for being the best flipper right now, and they're moving on to the round of 16. Here is another British robot, Quantum. It's the only crusher in the entire field, so to go 4-0 and be a top 10 seed in a sea of spinners is pretty impressive. Pretty much a superior Razor. By the way, to those people on social media, Razor and Hypnodisc are not good anymore, shut the fuck. Their opponent, Ribbot, has been struggling this season. Usually they're a great robot, being a quarterfinalist, 2 seed, and bounty hunter winner. But they're 1-3, barely making it in the top 32. Similar to Shatter and Tantrum, their past results earned them a spot over unimpressive 2-2 robots, such as Mammoth and Shred It Bro. They can choose between a horizontal or vertical spinner module, and for this fight, they chose the vert. That's what I would have gone with, as Quantum doesn't use forks, just a giant plow, which can be bent up by Ribbot's fork setup. Quantum is more than capable of biting through reinforced top armor into electronics, but it can't do that if they can't get under their opponent.
Let the bot battle begin!
I know that people call the hazards useless, but at least the kill saws can screw over the super prevalent, long thin forks. Like Endgame, Ribbot got its fork stuck in the kill saw slots while it was underneath Quantum, as his weapon was humming at full speed. This is a perfect opportunity for Cartridge to take a bite, and Quantum did. It bit through the top armor near Ribbot's drive motors, but missed them. After letting go, Quantum's team decided to leave Ribbot to be counted out while it was still stuck. Imagine if Ribbot freed itself and destroyed Quantum. Aw shit. Now, Quantum's team doesn't have the benefit of hindsight, but still, that was a huge mistake for Quantum. Ribbot freed itself and went back to attacking. Quantum's wedge got decimated by Ribbot, and they didn't want to keep fighting after being flipped, despite having a self-rider, instead accepting a loss by knockout. So the best non-spinner gets taken out pretty easily, and while the Destruction Spinner Spring is the most entertaining, it's still kind of lame how they're the overwhelming majority of the bracket. Ribbot and Black Dragon are meeting in the top 16, a rematch from the 2020 quarterfinals. The last British bot to fight is the Hammer bot, Beta. Yeah, all of the UK teams are on this side of the tournament. They're the 20th seed, again, and they're up against the former runner-up Whiplash. Beta went into this match with their anti-vert configuration, which is just a flat wall of steel surrounding the robot. The idea is that vertical spinners can't get any bite, so they'll just grind away. Actually a pretty decent idea. Problem is, almost every vert has some sort of wedge to prop up the flat wall for a hit anyways. Whiplash is technically a four-wheel drive vertical spinner with wedgelets, but they're still mainly a lifter. Whiplash only had one single wedge on their lifting arm, since they used some weight for top armor, but even with just one fork, it would have no problem getting under Beta's boat armor.
Let the bot battle begin!
Whiplash came out circling as Beta tracked them down. Whiplash unexpectedly got under Beta and lifted them up twice near the screws. Beta responded with a couple hammer swings, but nothing major happened save for a few sparks. Whiplash got a small pop with his disc that spun Beta around, setting them up to shove Beta on top of the upper deck. Cut to John Reed cursing because Beta's drive straight up died out of nowhere. One person said that Beta's safety link, basically the disarm switch, was jostled loose, but Beta's taken much worse than that. I don't know if they do use links or switches, as the British and Commonwealth robots use links in their countries, but switches are the majority in the US. Maybe they were high-centered, but it didn't look like it. Such a disappointing end to the legendary hammer. A fairly anticlimactic KO, and a rematch between Whiplash and Hydra awaits. Again, I know that Team Hertz doesn't have the but since Whiplash only had a single thin wedge to get under things for this fight, Beta's standard plow would have probably gotten under Whiplash every time. The boat configuration has lost every time, so while yes, the wall doesn't get bent or chewed up like a standard wedge, it just sets Beta up to take the full force of a vert's uppercut. The final fight of the round of 32 is Sawblaze against Blip, one of the few matches without a vertical spinner, in the normal sense. Blip's captain had previously beaten Sawblaze before when he was captain of Tantrum in Season 5, so this was kind of a grudge match. Both Sawblaze and Blip rely solely on the ground game. Sawblaze needs to scoop up their opponent to line up a shot with their hammer saw, while Blip literally cannot use its flipper without having their opponent on top of them, since it, uniquely, doesn't touch the ground.
Let the bot battle begin!
It was Sawblaze's forks that won the ground game, scooping up Blip. Blip is durable enough to tank hammer strikes from Sawblaze, so when Sawblaze kept slimming down their arm, Blip was still able to continue fighting on, but pieces of their armor and forks were lost. Occasionally, Blip would get under Sawblaze, but they never set them up for a flip. Sawblaze didn't waste a second to scoop up Blip and slice into them. Blip is a very zippy and quick robot, but Sawblaze's driving allowed them to keep their front pointed for a majority of the match. Time ran out, and Sawblaze won unanimously. Blip didn't get a single flip in, they more so survived the fight. It was a clear domination by Sawblaze. Both teams' reasonable robots shockingly were eliminated in the first round, but hey, sometimes it just be like that. Maybe the twins will do well next season. And this fight once again sets up another rematch in the round of 16, since Sawblaze is going to fight Monsoon next, just like in 2018. Seriously, the entire bottom half of the bracket's left side is just tournament rematches. That's not a complaint, and I guess it is bound to happen now that the show is 7 seasons in. And the remaining field is all stacked, so the round of 16 is sure to be full of brawls.